So the NFL schedule release is going to be coming out this week on Thursday, and it is one of those events that they try to, like, we know who we're playing. We know who the teams are, but now we get to know the order. Now we get to make our plans. We're going to fly to this game. Where are we going? Who are we playing on our birthday? On my birthday, who cares? Who are we playing in? Are we playing the Chiefs in Germany? By the way, I've heard some rumors that the Chiefs don't even want to play us. They want to play us in Arrowhead because they're so worried about facing us on a neutral field that they can't have it. They got to have that home field advantage. See, that's how scared everybody is of the Chicago Bears. But listen, I could go on and on. We have a huge packed show for you tonight. So you know what? I'm not going to waste any more time. Sammy, let's start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Tuesday night. You know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank. Huge show planned for you tonight. The Bears rookies were in camp this weekend, and we will have rookie Kendall Williamson on the show to talk about his thoughts and his experience about joining the Bears. And speaking of the draft, we have one of the top draft analysts in the business, John Vogel, who you have seen on the Sick Network before. He's going to come in and talk specifically about the Chicago Bears. We talked about the schedule release. A lot of stuff to cover here in a very short amount of time. So let's waste no time and bring in our co-host, Carmen Vitali, who joins us from foxsports.com. Carmen, how you living?
I'm great. Much better than last week. So thanks for holding it down. I was a little sicky after spending my entire weekend at Hallis. So
yeah,
I'm back better than ever.
Fishbane got you sick, and then the things just went.
Yeah,
by the way,
Kevin. We'll blame Kevin.
We like Kevin. But Draft Dr. Phil was it was not Kevin. Draft Dr. Phil was here last week. He was disappointed that he didn't get a chance to speak with you, but hopefully we can make that happen sometime in the near future. And were you at Hallis Hall this weekend for the rookie camp?
On Friday I was, before I hopped up to Detroit to do some USFL stuff for Fox. But yeah, I got to go on Friday.
Of course, you were in Detroit, of all places. Oh, you love Detroit. But listen, we got it. But listen. We'll talk about that. I want to get to your thoughts, but you know what? We got a very special guest joining us right now. He was a 7th round pick of the Chicago Bears, played his football at Stanford, where he earned a bachelor's degree in product design, a master's degree in sociology, and no shock, he was an academic All-American. He is from Snellville, Georgia, home of a handful of NFL players, some Olympians, but more importantly, Abby from The Young and the Restless. That actress is from Snellville, Georgia. I don't know. Nobody knows this. I knew it. I looked it up today, but it's exciting times. So let's waste no time. Please welcome to the show our new favorite Bear, Kendall Williamson, is joining us here this evening. Kendall, how you living?
I'm living great. I can't be just feeling real blessed right now. Very happy with everything that's going on. So, yeah.
Well, it's a very exciting time, and I know it was your first weekend with the Chicago Bears. That's in the book. And every time somebody does this, it's exciting. You get the uniform, you get to meet some of the players. What was the biggest surprise for you? Like when you were out there, what shocked you when you were out there at Hallis Hall this weekend?
Oh man, honestly, well, I'd say one thing was it was kind of the weather was real nice. Like, I mean, I know it's May. But I mean, I was expecting it. I don't know what I was expecting, to be honest. But the thing is, so I think my flight was on Thursday, and I was looking at the weather on Wednesday, and the day before, like the high was like 40. I'm like, oh man, because I'm from Georgia. I went to college in California. Like, I'm not used to the cold. I'm gonna have to get adjusted. I'm gonna get some big jackets and everything like that, some long johns, so I can get ready for those harsh winters.
It's not like the Bay Area is super warm. I mean, Stanford, the Bay Area of Northern California, excuse me, can get pretty cold. You've had to have experienced. You played at Washington State, like you've experienced some cold weather.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it hasn't been as bad. I think we just got a little lucky. Like, I think probably the coldest played was probably 20s, maybe 20s. Like, I know 30s for sure. I remember we played at Utah.
Oh yeah,
this
Utah.
past season. That was during that was late in the season. I think game 10.
Mhm.
So I'm pretty sure that was like November, and it was like in the 30s. But yeah, even Washington State when we played them, it hasn't been that bad. We played them either earlier in the season. I think one time it was actually forecasted to snow, and didn't. I was honestly kind of excited because I was like, I get to play in my first snow game, but sadly that didn't end up happening. But yeah, yeah,
Well, you'll get to do that here.
yeah, a lot, a lot. I'm happy about it. I'm
You'll get
happy
to
about it.
practice. You'll get to have a
Yeah.
snow practice here too at some
Oh man,
It's going to be one of those things where you're like, be careful what you wish for. At some point, you're going to be like, why did I want to play in the snow at all? But it should be pretty good. Carmen, before I let you jump in there, one other question I just wanted to hit you with is that, was there one guy this weekend too, when you guys were out there practicing, was there one player or just somebody who you're just like, oh my God, this is a great, I'm sure everybody's good. They're NFL caliber players, but was there one guy who like really stood out where you're like, whoa, this guy's the real deal? Did we freeze? Did I freeze?
I can,
Kendall, can you hear me?
yeah, I can still hear you.
But was there some guy who like kind of surprised you this weekend? Some guy one of the players who stood out to you?
Oh, are you talking about me?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Man, I'm trying to think. Because, like you said, like there's a lot of NFL caliber players. I mean, I feel like I'll see a lot more on the defensive side because I play defense and everything like that.
Yeah.
Man, it's hard to point out one guy. I think it was man. I really like Terrell. I'm probably a little bit biased because we're from the same county,
Yeah.
actually. So he got like a crazy pick. And like we were in like cover two, and it was just went up, got the ball. So it was honestly beautiful to see, especially as a DB. Like I got a lot of respect for when DBs make plays because I know how hard it can be for those plays to come, especially playing against like a high level of talent
Right.
at a place like a rookie minicamp for the Chicago Bears. So honestly, just seeing that play, I really like Terrell. I really like Terrell.
yeah, that was on Friday, wasn't it? Because we saw him.
Yeah,
It was that first practice. Yeah, because we
Mhm.
all saw that. We were like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I want to back up a little bit though, because where are you right now? Are you back in Georgia or are you in California?
Yeah, I'm back in Georgia right now.
You're back in Georgia. Were you there for the draft? Tell me what happened when you got the call. Where were you? Who was around you? And what contact did you have with the Bears prior to that? I want to know what your impressions were right away.
Well, honestly, things were obviously because I was like the second to last pick, so things were kind of winding down, and so I was back here in Snellville with my dad. We were just sitting on the couch watching the rest of the draft, and I got a call. I was like, "What number is this?" I was like, "No way, right?" I was like, "This must just be some random number." And then I get the call, and it's Ryan Poles, and he was like, "We're about to submit your name." And I was honestly, truthfully, I was in complete shock because I didn't expect it. I had some limited contact with the Bears before, not a whole lot, so that's why also partially part of the reason I wasn't really expecting it. But man, when it happened, I was like, wow. I was honestly just it's crazy because I mean I know it's just the beginning. It's not like the work is it's honestly just starting, but it's kind of crazy. It was crazy for me to just see my name up there. Because it took a lot of work just to be in a position to potentially get drafted, regardless of where it is. So I was just super grateful, super surprised. My dad was going crazy. He pulled out some champagne. So he was like, I gotta take a toast right now. I was like, go ahead, do your thing. But yeah, it was a lot of excitement, a lot of joy. And definitely feel huge feeling of like just feeling super blessed.
And you saw your name on the scroll eventually, where it's like, oh, like that's me. That's the guy. I'm going to Chicago.
Yeah. That was honestly the craziest thing. I think I got a picture of it if I remember. I know my dad got a picture
I
because
was going to
remember
say, hold on. No, I'm sure.
I was gonna
I'm
say.
sure everyone in your family, all your friends were definitely
yeah.
taking photos up until that point, though. Because when you're a seventh round pick, are you already negotiating with other teams to be an undrafted free agent? Like, what was that process like? Were you expecting, like, we're going to sign here or anything like that?
Yeah. So that's kind of how the process is like because I mean I know I wasn't going first or second day. I knew I could potentially be a late third day to undrafted free agent. Just going in. And so kind of during that whole process of like you start getting into the middle of the third day, late third day, like you're talking to teams and kind of figuring out where you would want to sign if you go undrafted,
Mhm.
everything like that. And then agents and like GMs are talking, kind of like cutting deals and everything like that. So that was kind of what was kind of in the works, kind of during that process of those later rounds, just because there was a lot of uncertainty for me if I would go, when I would go. So yeah, that's kind of just what's happening like behind the scenes during those like later rounds for those guys who were kind of on the bubble.
No, for sure. And of course, being a late round pick from Stanford, here come the Richard Sherman comparisons. Do you avoid that or do you embrace that? How are you feeling?
Oh man, I mean, I embrace it because I mean, honestly, it gives me a lot of hope. Not that I didn't think I could do it before, but it gives me a lot of hope knowing like there's so many greats who have been late round draft picks, undrafted free agents. Like I feel like a lot of it just has to do with the amount of work that you're willing to put in once you get there, where your head's at, where your discipline is at, and everything like that. So I could definitely take the comparisons. I'm not one who's gonna stray away from a challenge,
Mhm.
or anything like that. But I'm definitely I'll take it. It just is definitely it gives me a lot of hope because I know like I can make it regardless of what round. The round doesn't matter. Undrafted drafted doesn't matter. Like it's just really about when you show up. What are you gonna do? What can you do for me now? What can you do for me today, this week? And just bringing that mentality when I go up there for good.
I'm interested to know. I don't think a lot of people realize how different the preparation process is for individual athletes when they're going to training for the combine, training for off season, regardless if you go to the combine or not. But how different that is than what your off seasons have previously looked like when you're part of a team regimen, and just the different things that you have to stress versus when you're in a program with the rest of your teammates. So what did your preparation look like this offseason as soon as you graduated? And even
Mhm.
before that, once your season was done in Stanford?
Ooh, so honestly, like so I was training in Southern California, and got out there honestly as soon as I could. So I went home for Christmas for a couple days, left before New Year's, and then I was literally training like the next day. Kind of week to week, what it looked like, we would run 4 times a week. So those runs would be focused. Everything essentially was more focused on what we had to do in those pro day combine drills. So 5, 10, 5, L cone, 40-yard dash. So during the week, essentially, like we do some speed stuff focused on more of the acceleration. So that's like the start your 0 to 10, your 10 to 20. Then we do more top end speed stuff. So that's kind of your 20 to 40, and just getting that sort of technique down. Because honestly, what I realized is there's a lot of technique to running the 40. It's not just I'm about to go out there and run. It doesn't work like that. And um, I feel like there's a big misconception about what people really run in the 40, because they think they could just go out there and run. I know if I didn't do the training, definitely would have been slower. Um, and but yeah, so we had those. We also had like agility days, so that was more for the 5, 10, 5 for the L cones. That's just change of direction type of stuff. And then we'd have lifts, and those are mainly focused on lower body explosiveness. So that's for things like the vert, the broad, and then we do like upper body stuff, and that was more like more upper body endurance because that's what the 225 is. It's like just being able to move that weight for as long as possible, honestly. And then we also had um, position drill work about I think it was like 3 times a week. So that would be just focusing on those pro day combine drills. So like for me, that's a lot of break 45, break 90, hip turns, things of that nature. Then we'd also go on the board because a lot of teams, like in some of the interviews you'll have either at the senior games or combine, they'll want to put you on the board, see what you know. Do you know your defense? Could I give you my defense? We go through an entire meeting and then you would be able to draw up the same defense again. Or can we watch film? Can I give you a play? I'm gonna show you some film. I want you to call the play, tell me exactly what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to respond. So that was kind of a lot of it. A lot of it was physical, a lot of it was mental, and I also think I kind of had a big transition into knowing how to take care of my body, like knowing what my body needs and what it doesn't need. I'm not gonna lie, in college, a lot like I was just beating up my body. I was just working out as much as possible, doing all this stuff, and not really. But now, like as a pro, like it's a big transition because now it's kind of your body's kind of your meal ticket. The best ability is availability. If you're not available, if you're not taking care of your body, and doing the right things to make sure that you can be available, then obviously it's a business. You can get cut. So those were definitely that was kind of how the whole process went. And then we usually have something on Saturdays, and then Sundays we would have off. And it started to taper down once we got closer to like pro day and combine, just because they wanted our bodies to be fresh. So I guess it was kind of like it was kind of like we work our way up, like beat your body up, beat your body up, beat your body up, and then it's supposed to kind of like start to go tear down and then go all the way back up. So like honestly, I forget how they explained it, but the strength and conditioning guys, they definitely explained it real good. I'm not explaining it as good, but it was supposed to make you peak at the right time, essentially.
No, it's fascinating all the work that you have to do that goes into it. And now that you've gone in, you've had a nice weekend with the Chicago Bears, you've gotten a taste of professional football. What is the preparation going to be like? What are you going to be working on over the next couple of weeks till you're back at Hallis Hall?
I'd say the biggest thing for me is probably just getting in the playbook, and continuing to watch film, and just honestly pick up the game. A lot of that just comes through repetition. I feel like for the playbook wise, just knowing the sort of responsibilities that I have in every single coverage based off emotions, based off of splits, just everything that kind of goes along with it. Like it's essential because especially as a safety, you got to be able to communicate to both sides of the field, the linebackers, the corners, like you got to be in contact with everybody. So knowing your responsibility and also other people's responsibility is key. And I feel like can give you an opportunity, at least a foot in the door of like at least knowing your responsibility is like the first step to even being able to play in the defense. And then I'd also say just film like the NFL is definitely a different game. I mean, the hashes and numbers is one thing that I feel like I didn't realize was so different until I started actually playing on it. And the difference that makes in the game is honestly it's definitely different. So getting used to that and just learning more about like how NFL teams play, how our offense is going to attack you. I know it's a lot more detailed of a game. So honing in on those little details and finding a way to honestly just prepare as much as possible as I can before I get up there and continue that preparation once I get up there as well.
What were your first impressions of Coach Hoke?
Oh, I like Coach Hoke. I like Coach Hoke. And it's interesting because my brother was with the Falcons, and he actually got coached by Coach Hoke too. So he was like, he hit me up. He was like, oh, your coach about to be Coach Hoke. I was like, well, yeah, he coaches corners. I'm a safety, but like we're still all in the same place room. But yeah, he's definitely a great guy. I could tell he has a lot of knowledge. Obviously, has a lot of experience and everything like that. Coached a lot of great guys. I know he even coached like Charles Tillman, Tim Jennings when he was with the Bears previously. So definitely has seen real talent and can help elevate people to the next level.
Yeah,
I worked with him in Tampa, so he was great. Yeah.
What was that vibe check like? You mentioned Charles Tillman. He came and he spoke to you guys. What was it like interacting with players like that? Now, obviously for Bears fans, we think of Charles Tillman, we think of the peanut punch and everything, and it means a lot to us. But like for you, what was it like being able to share some time with Charles Tillman?
Man, I don't even know. It's tough to even put into words because to be honest with you, I've watched his highlight tape so many times. Like it's not even funny. Like I watched the interview, he was talking about the peanut punch too. Like, so honestly, it was just a great experience to even like just be in the same room as him because like that's defensive back greatness right there, if we're being
Yeah.
honest. And he was super like he's a real humble guy, and I could just tell that from him talking to us, and I actually got to talk to him. He gave out his number to the DBs, and so I was
Ooh.
actually talked to him today, earlier for a little while, and he's super genuine, super honest, and really is looking to provide information to guys to help them like exceed at this next level. He knows that there's a lot of change. He's been through it, obviously. So he's just really, really helpful. But I mean, it was a great experience even hearing him, hearing the things he has to say, and I definitely was taking notes.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was super
I
cool.
love that. Growing up in Chicago, I mean, he held a camp in my town, and so we would always go and like walk through the fences. And he was always so genuine and wonderful. And it's amazing that he's come and talked to the rookies like 2 years in a row, I believe.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's so involved with the organization and the individual players just says a lot about what this town means to him and what he means to the town.
Mhm.
What has been have you gotten to experience any Chicago yet?
No, not really. Like, so during minicamp, we were really just around the football facility. So we had like kind of a lot of intro stuff on Thursday, contract signing, meetings, and then Friday we had meetings, practice, meetings, went back, studied the playbook, and then Saturday was meetings, practice. So didn't really get to see too much. We were kind of just in the hotel and in the facility, but when we go back up, we already talked, like the player personnel people were talking to us, so it sounds like we're going to get to see a little bit of the city, go to some restaurants. I think we may be going to a Cubs game too, so that'll be cool. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what Chicago's about. I've never been to Chicago. Literally the only time I had been to Chicago before was through a connecting flight. So
Oh wow.
so my first time actually like being in the area, like not in the airport, was that time. So it was definitely super cool.
All right. Well, here's some words of wisdom for you that you take notes here, because number one, never put ketchup on a hot dog. It's a trick question. Don't do that. I know that everybody talks about deep dish Chicago pizza. That's like deep dish Chicago pizza is like Thanksgiving dinner. You do it once a year when relatives come to town. You don't need to worry about that. You love the tavern style pizza with the thin crust. There's a
Thin
place
crust.
called
Yeah.
there's a place called Joe's in Wheeling, Illinois. It's close to the facility. That's kind of what you want. Be cool to Stacy. Be cool to Stacy Dales. She's one of the best, so you'll see her in the facility a lot. I know you said you're going to a Cubs game. You don't have to back the Cubs because you probably grew up a Braves guy, which is fine. But you should probably embrace the White Sox, even though they're terrible. You should probably embrace them.
Don't wish that on him, Adam. Don't
Listen, you gotta,
he doesn't need that life.
All right, fair enough. He can do it one
I
afternoon.
live that life. I don't want it for you, Kendall.
One afternoon, he's got to go out. He's got to put on a White Sox jersey, throw out a first pitch. Let's see. So you don't like Cal. Like, we hate Cal. We don't like Grayson High School. Oh, Grayson High School is the word. I think that's your rival, or was your rival. But how do you feel about the Packers? Are you ready to join us in pettiness and not like the Green Bay Packers?
I'm very ready. I've always liked the rivalries, high school, college, man. So I feel like it also brings out like a lot of spirit in football, which I love to see. It's a lot of love and also a lot of hate, but I mean, when people come together, whether it's for some hate or with a hate for another team, it's always a good time. So I mean, I'm definitely excited to join that rivalry for sure.
It's a definite bonding experience. And Carmen, did I miss anything else? Any other Chicago high points you should know about?
Yeah. No, definitely like thin crust over deep dish. That's the real local thing. So I really stress that. I'm condiment averse, so I don't put anything on my hot dogs.
Oh,
but you're
my
not
God.
gonna actually get killed for putting ketchup on your hot dog. There's plenty of people that do that. So don't listen to Adam. You're fine.
It's honestly super interesting y'all say the whole deep dish thing, because I feel like all I hear about is Chicago deep dish pizza, and like people talk about like if you go to Chicago, you got to get deep dish pizza. So,
But
Pequod's in the city. If you make it to the city, Pequod's in the city is the best deep dish in the city. But It's a special occasion thing. It's so rich and it's very heavy. So it's not exactly pizza. Like pizza is pizza because you can just take a bunch of slices and absentmindedly, like that's not the deep dish experience. You should do it, every now and again. But we have really good thin crust here and no one knows that, but you're going to know that now.
We're helping you out.
Thin crust. I'm a big fan of thin crust, so I'm gonna definitely enjoy that.
You're going to love it. Whatever town you go to in Chicago, it's amazing. You'll walk into a place, there'll be a liquor store that has a pizza joint attached to it with a bar. And it's like, these are all over the place. You can drive, like the last time I was in Chicago, that's how I found Joe's I'm like, I'm just going to drive. I know I will find a place. And that's exactly what happened. And that is the true thing. It's like being a Southern California person. Like you go to Universal Studios once and then you never have to go again. And that's what it's like with deep dish. Definitely try it. Hit all the big ones, hit all the recommended places. You can try it once. Not too many in 1 week, but you know what I'm saying? Like you go out there and you try it and then you're done with it. Then you can move on and then your relatives can go out and try it when they come to town to come to one of your games.
Biggest tip though is the divier the place looks, the better. That Chicago is all about dive bars, dive pizza joints, like places that are just mom and pop places. If you can help it, there's too much that the city has to offer to go to chains. So don't do that.
Yeah. Okay.
And if there's a bowling alley attached, it's even better. But listen, Kendall, I know you're very busy. We appreciate you taking some time to join us here tonight. We're looking forward to seeing you get out there and what you can bring to the Bears. I know a lot of people, myself included, saw you at Stanford. I'm a West Coast guy, so I watch a lot of the Pac-12 after dark. So I'm excited for you to be here. We're excited. I think it's going to be a great season. I hope that you enjoy it, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yes, sir. I'd love to. I appreciate y'all having me. Thank you so much, and I'll definitely will take the food recommendations.
All right.
I'll check up on you at Hallis when I'm up there this season. So I'll make sure that you're getting the right food.
Sounds good.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you'll see her. So hopefully I'll be able to go out there some point this summer too. We can meet up and maybe we'll go hit Joe's and have a good time. But enjoy the rest of your evening and thank you so much for being here.
Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it. Bye.
All right, there he goes, the great Kendall Williamson. I'm excited. I really like him. The thing that I really like, and we talked about this, his scholastic background. Like when you go back and you look at what he did when he was in high school in Georgia, like really just a bright person. And so I think that, that's never a bad thing to have on your football team.
That matters so much to the position he plays too. I mean, safeties in a lot of defenses, actually, the safeties are the ones that can relay the call. And especially in kind of the way old school football played, I feel like safeties were always the captains of the defense because they're on the back level. They can see everything. And so having that football IQ to be able to read what the offense is presenting and to be able to kind of make checks and do all that kind of stuff, that's only going to help him. So we love some smart guys in the defensive backfield.
No, 100%. Well, yeah, you went to Northwestern too, so you can appreciate smart people. Although the ASU kind of
went to Arizona State also, so I can also appreciate not having a ton of.
I remember I remember
like school actually when Richard Sherman was playing at Stanford, so we played against him.
Yeah.
It was he was baller back then too.
But he was, again, like he was a 5th round pick and a lot of people looked at him and they were just like, that's not going to translate. And, I'm starting to go through a lot of the scouting reports because I was interested because it just, you're curious as to why some players might or might not fall. And I think that Stanford players always get a little outside of the offensive linemen. It always feels like the rest of them always get like a little bit of a bias towards them, and they really have to go out there.
It's the Pac-12 in general.
Yeah,
like people don't take the Pac-12 seriously, and I mean, that's just I don't know. But yeah, you're right. A lineman, and then obviously quarterback. But
if you're a quarterback,
it's interesting though. Yeah, it's really interesting to know though that or to not think that you would try and pull some safeties. I mean, because of the fact that. Obviously, these guys have a very high level IQ in general, not to mention football IQ. David Shaw also has been there forever and has instilled he's developed these guys into professionals on and off the field, despite the fact that they play in the Pac-12. So I think that there should be more. Richard Sherman probably opened a lot of eyes to Stanford, and I think they should continue.
And like you said, when he was playing in college, I was shocked that he lasted all the way to the 5th round. And we saw what happened. A five-time All-America. He was 3-time first-team All-America, All-Pro. Five-time All-America would be pretty impressive, but he was a 5-time All-Pro, 3 first-teamers, 2 second-teamers. So we'll see what Kendall's got up, and I'm excited about him. And I've heard a lot of buzz building with him, so it'll be interesting to see how he progresses as the offseason moves along. But speaking of our draft picks, we're going to be joined right now by one of the top NFL draft analysts in the business. You can find him on Twitter at Draft Vogel. He has been on the Sick Network before, and we wanted to have him in here, and we hope he's going to say nice things about the Bears. No, I'm just kidding. He can say whatever he wants, but I believe he's in. Is he here? Is John with us? John,
yes, I'm here.
John.
What hat are you wearing? What hat are you wearing?
Reese's from the Senior Bowl directly.
From the Senior Bowl.
Oh yeah, I was up there.
Do you know how hard it is to go down to the Senior Bowl when you're allergic to peanut butter? Like, that's me. I'm allergic to peanut butter, and like there's Reese's everywhere. Like they even hang it outside like your door. If you're like when I was with the Bucks, I would go, and for every team personnel, they like hang it outside your door every day, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with all of these. I can't eat.
Well, the nice thing too is when you pick up your credential, they give you a nice little gift bag as well, and then you get up in the press box, and that's where I got the hat. The hat's all sitting out there with all the game day, the books, and then Reese's. They are everywhere.
I do still have a notebook that's like the leather, like football material, and it's got the Reese's logo in it. I still use that. Every time I go to the Senior Bowl, I make sure to bring that because it's just like, I think it's fun.
You have to. It's tradition. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the peanut butter cups, but I do not like Reese's Pieces. It's just, I don't
know. I'm right there with you because it's like an M&M, but it's not an M&M, and it's not
shocking.
The same. Yeah, it's not the same. You're right.
I don't know. It's a weird. I don't know. Oh yeah, that's right. Poor Carmen. I'm sorry. And then I'm sure like everybody's got to harangue you too. Like, how do you not like? You're like, I didn't choose to be allergic. I'm just allergic to it.
That literally, people are like offering me Reese's, and I'm like, no. They're like, oh come on,
I might die.
I can't have it unless I want to be down for the count for the rest of the week I'm here. But yeah, they're very forceful, the Reese's people, and everybody has an opinion on if you should take one or not. And I'm like, no, I'm not. It's not even that I'm watching my figure; it's that I literally can't eat these.
I think Jim Nagy pointed this out this week on Twitter. He said that because one of the players described the bowl. He said the Reese's Bowl. He said this is how effective the branding has been. This is not the Senior Bowl anymore; it's the Reese's Bowl.
It's the Reese's Bowl.
That's right. That's a great call. That is absolutely the truth. But you were down there for it. Obviously, you've been doing a lot of great work breaking down the draft over the last couple of weeks. I'll just get to it. What did you think of the Bears draft? Obviously, the homers not Carmen. Carmen probably hated it. But the homers like me, I'm joking, Carmen. I was very impressed with what Ryan Poles was able to do. What is your general sense of what the Bears did?
Oh, no, I'm in agreement with you, Adam. And it's because you got a lot of difference makers in later rounds. And that's where the bulk of your team is built is after, the day two. And I think when you look at Roschon Johnson, first pick of the 4th round that the Bears took, like that's a starting running back this year. I don't think a lot of people realize how good Roschon Johnson was because he's behind Bijan Robinson his entire career at Texas. But Roschon is a starter. I like him above, Deonta Foreman and Khalil Herbert because I think he's a better overall running back. He's a better receiver out of the backfield. So I think that's a really great pick that I look at and go, wow. And then Noah Sewell will be a good role player. It was a nice pick in the 5th round. Sewell is kind of that weird sort of like tweener where you're not sure if he's an inside linebacker or if he's an edge rusher because he really struggled. He didn't really do both very well because he's big, right? So he's big like an edge rusher, but he played middle linebacker at college. So there might be a little bit of a learning curve there. But I think you're really excited about his potential. And then, honestly, I'm not just trying to say it because you just had him on the show and I was listening to him, but Kendall Williamson, that's a 7th round pick. That's a guy that's going to he's going to be on the 53-man roster, because you need strong safety depth. And that's him. And I think he's better than anybody outside of Brisker, Jaquan Brisker that's on the roster. So anytime that we're talking about 3 or 4 impact players right away that you're picking in day 3, it's a great draft. And I didn't even touch on, who they started off with. So
I think it's important too to note that a lot of those guys on day 3 were guys that they can use in special teams. Like Kendall is a great example of the guy that can be a contributor, in that safety room as depth, but then also, I mean, that's a position that can play special teams. Whereas maybe in the top part of the draft, you didn't get guys between the defensive tackles and obviously Darnell Wright. Like those guys aren't doubling on special teams often. And especially not Darnell Wright, but maybe some of those D tackles can get it on the field goal blocking unit and all that kind of stuff.
But Terrell Smith too,
yeah.
right? Terrell Smith out of Minnesota.
Right.
That's kind of one of those underrated cornerbacks that you didn't see a lot of draft people talking about at all. But like his tape he has some really special moments that he had too. And the Big Ten is the second best conference. Sorry guys if I'm offending anybody. Second best conference in college football. So
nobody's thinking that the Big Ten is coming for the SEC's crown.
Well, no, I think that the
he's apologizing because we're talking up the Pac-12.
Well, that too, but it's
very self-aware.
But no,
very self-aware.
I think that the Big Ten and the SEC is very close now in terms of overall from top to bottom depth. I mean, the Big Ten's pulling pretty close in draft picks every year. I think this year they were within 10. So they're bridging that gap. They got the great TV contract right now too. That's really helping them. But in terms of like the receivers that come out of that conference overall that Terrell Smith had to cover, think about it. Ohio State, Penn State keeps putting out guys, and then even when you go over to that side, there's some really good dudes.
Jordan Addison was another one. Oh wait, they haven't joined the Pac-12 yet.
Not yet. Almost, not that almost. But no, Wisconsin's always had some really sneaky guys that make NFL rosters as well. So he's got experience working against a lot of NFL people, and he did so pretty well. So I think that's why he kind of snuck in there at the 5th round. And that's another guy's special teams as well. So yeah, I thought overall I like this class a lot. I'm not the type of person that's going to sit here and go, oh, this is an F grade right after the draft. Like they failed this draft. Yeah. Because I'm trying to see what they're trying to
That's accomplish. Why you're never going to make it on the internet.
Exactly. You're right.
I know.
The Bears have already failed. GM's questioning Ryan Poles and why he even hasn't. Like, those are the headlines that come out, which seem ridiculous. And I think a part of it is because, obviously they passed on Jalen Carter. Yeah. And Carmen and I have been sitting here for weeks, months. We said if Jalen Carter does not get drafted by the Lions and Seahawks, he's not getting drafted by the Bears because there'll be too many red flags. What did you make of that? What did you make of the move? Did you think the Bears did the right thing? Was it the right move to pass on Jalen Carter?
Yeah, absolutely. They got depth down there right now, and then to go into the second round, you take, Gervin Dexter out of Florida. Like, he's a heck of a defensive tackle too. Dexter was kind of one of those guys that he plays the 3 tech, but he can play 5 as well. And, he's got the body type that he can kind of do both. He's going to be better as a 3 because I think he's right around 300 pounds. So you're going to put him there. You're going to put him inside, basically exactly what you would have done with Jalen Carter anyways. Now you're not getting that talent, but, Dexter, kept his nose clean off the field. So you've got that, right? The thing with him as well is you're talking about length. Like, that's something that he has that Carter doesn't. So, everybody's running defensive rotations anyways on the fronts. You're going to go 8 men deep if you can on your defensive line. And the reason that is because you're going to keep, the offensive line tired and you're staying fresh. That's kind of the overall thought. The Eagles did that in 2017 and won a Super Bowl. And that was, everybody kind of fell into that trend. So, getting guys like him and then Zach Pickens as well in the 3rd round, these are rotational guys. You're going to be able to do fine with that. Carter wasn't going to play anything more than a rotation anyways. So I thought that was a good move. You move back 1 spot, you pick up an extra draft pick for it, and then you go get the guy you're going to take anyways. Like, heck yeah, do it.
Yeah, I think there was a big thing too with Jalen Carter having to be a leader then if he was to come to the Bears. That 3 tech spot is supposed to be a guy that is going to galvanize the defense, and this isn't an established group yet. They don't have established veterans. They don't have established leadership because they're so young. And I don't think that was a situation that was going to get the most out of Jalen Carter, because he is somebody that needs to be shown the way a little bit of how to be a pro, how to work, how to be a teammate. And I mean, the Eagles just made so much sense. I thought Detroit made a lot of sense too, because they got a really good team culture, established culture right now. But the Eagles made so much sense just because of the fact the veterans on that defensive line alone, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, not to mention you've got half of Jalen's teammates from Georgia that are on that team now
Right.
to like welcome him to the NFL. So I just think that was the perfect spot for him. And I wanted to stress to Bears fans, like, yes, he's a jet, like his talent is insane, but I don't think that the Bears in their current iteration would have gotten what he is capable of out of him, unfortunately. So stick with the rotation. You've got Justin Jones as kind of the veteran in inside there now, and Alan Williams talked to us about that on last Friday. In addition to Javon Dexter, Zach Pickens, kind of getting those guys, like you said, on a rotation that can keep them fresh and make them, play 25, 30 snaps a game each. And it works.
No, and this is a really great point that you just made too, Carmen, because when this past year, there were the leadership concerns that kind of came out about Carter. There were a lot of people that were stressing that. I think Todd McShay was probably number one on top of that. But now they asked him about that. They've talked to him about that in interviews and stuff to Jalen about the leadership role that he had to take and all that. And he specifically talked about Jordan Davis and how he was kind of expected to take over that mantle and how he was struggling with it. This was an interview that was back in April of last year. So that's an excellent point that you bring up, because that is the 3-tech is kind of the leader of that group normally. The edge rushers, they're the havoc guys. They're the guys that are going to go it after the quarterback. You want them to be fast. You really want them to just beat that tackle on the outside. But if you're a 3-tech and you're going to run a shift, which you're going to see Chicago probably do that a lot this year, right? Like, pre-snap shift, that's called by the 3-tech on normal, because he's looking at how, he's figuring out what the blocking assignment is going to be and what they're going to do with their scheme coming down, how they're going to take on. And if they need to shift, that's his responsibility to call it. So I'm stressing that's a really great point that you brought up on a whole nother level that people don't talk about enough, I don't think, because that was a huge part of his drop this year, was just the fact that he's just more of a follower than a leader. That's not a bad thing. It's just when you need that role, you need that person in that role. He's just not that fit for it.
And I think weirdly, Javon Dexter is one of those guys too, that because of the scheme that he was in Florida, where he was more of a 2-gap guy, and he had to sit back and read before he could react, which is I think why you saw on tape he was a little bit slower, or you didn't really see the get off that he's capable of. But with Chicago in that 3-tech spot, you're not responsible for 2 gaps. You're responsible for 1, and you're responsible for getting penetration in the pocket. And the fact that he has that experience, though, having to read the offense, is going to probably, I imagine, that was a big reason why the Bears kind of targeted him in the second round.
Yeah, and his explosion is ridiculous. Like, if you see this guy's thighs, like, oh my goodness.
Let him just go.
Oh, he's going to be great.
That's what and in his measurables, his broad jump and his thing, like that is one of the things that, oh God, like I'm spacing on the coach's name, but one of the coaches was talking about that. Like that is an important measurable, is the broad jump and the explosion. And that's one of the things that stood out about Dexter. But Sammy, I did see, was somebody trying to butt in? Do we have a question that we needed to get in there? If not, I can, whoa. Okay. Here we go. How does everybody feel? Especially Carmen. Oh yeah. This is one of Carmen's, this is one of her mantras. Tevin Jenkins, it appears, is going to be moving to left tackle. How do we feel about that as a group? How do we feel about this? Carmen, why don't we start with you?
Listen, Tevin, given his prior experience, he did play left tackle. Kicking inside at guard is a little bit, he has to read a little bit more, but he has the experience now. It's a little bit more of a cerebral position because you're closer to the ball. And you have to react quicker and all that other stuff. But I do think because he's had the experience on the left side before, it's not as hard. I don't know if it's inevitable though. That entire interior of the Bears offensive line is up for interpretation at this point. And Ryan Poles has done a really good job of There's like 4 main guys that are going to be competing for those 3 spots, and he wanted to create competition on the interior and see where each guy fits naturally and getting the most out of each guy and who's the best for each position. So, I mean, between Tevin and Nate Davis and Cody Whitehair and Lucas Patrick, center is definitely between Lucas and Cody. But I mean, between Nate and Tevin, they're going to figure out what position is best for each of them. So I'm okay with it. I'd let if you figure out that is his natural spot, I just play a guy with his dominant side at his natural position if you at all can. Because why make muscle memory work against you? Why? Doesn't make any sense.
What do you think, John? When you move a guy like Tevin Jenkins, when he was coming out, he was I think to some people was thought to be a tackle. Last year, he was a standout at guard. Do you think this could be a good move for the Chicago Bears?
So I remember when he came out of, it was Oklahoma State.
Yes.
I remember thinking, I was watching him against, it was that Oklahoma game that really stuck in my mind in 2020, I think, right? He was drafted. Yes. 2020, the COVID year. He really struggled at tackle in that game. And it was the quickness, right? The lateral quickness and just being able to hold up overall with, like Carmen was talking about with the read and looking at, am I supposed to set here? Am I trying to take this guy to the edge? Well, however you want to look at it. Right. But I always thought he was a guard. I really thought that he was a guard, and I wasn't surprised that he had a really good year at left guard. So we're talking about him moving potentially to left tackle, right? No,
he's going to go to left. No, he'd go to left guard.
Okay. So
Braxton Jones is left tackle.
Right.
That is his job.
I like Braxton. I liked him. I remember him. So
we're the Braxton Jones show of record. No, it's the Braxton Jones is our left tackle show of record.
Fair enough.
Ryan Poles, he kind of, I don't know, he telegraphs what he's going to do. And so I could take Ryan Poles at his word.
No, and but the thing is, when you have, I learned this from Mark Gorsak, who's face of the 40, right? Combine, 40-yard dash guy. He always told me that you always play a guy where he played in college. And if you have to move him, you move him after you try him there. And so they tried him there, I think, right? Yeah. And so it's time to move him inside, and he's going to be fine there because guard is much more of a power position. You don't need to be as quick. You don't need to have the speed to beat somebody to the outside. As long as you can hold up with your anchor, you're fine. And I thought that was his strength, honestly. His career has been holding up with his anchor, right, and getting into his.
Yeah, he's got a good anchor.
He's got a really good bend too to him. He can take some power. He can take a stiff arm up high and still maintain his leverage. Because he's got the length to do that as well. So I think that it's going to work out fine. If he's going to guard, I'm all for it, like definitely. And yeah, I loved Braxton at Southern Utah. Like his tape there, I know it was Southern Utah and it's FCS, but that he was a lot of fun to watch, and obviously had a really good offseason leading into the draft last year.
Yeah, you know what, and it made a lot of sense. He started every game at left tackle, and it felt like going through the draft process, everybody was picking left tackles for the Bears, like mocking left tackles to the Bears, or even Peter Skoronski, another guard, which we don't need.
Right?
Not a guard.
Agree.
Not a guard.
100%.
Not a guard.
Okay. Well, you know what? I love it.
I am so excited for him to be Nashville's or Tennessee's left tackle, and just show everybody up.
Let's ask that. Okay, you saw Skoronski. Do you think that he translates as a guard or a tackle in the NFL?
See, I saw him as guard. I'll be honest. I saw him as a guard, and it's because typically with that size, and I think that he had the length issues as well. You saw it kind of show up sometimes, especially when he played Lucas Van Ness. And Lucas Van Ness right now, yeah, I know he was a first-round pick. He's a power guy right now. He's strictly, you watch him, he does not know how to use his hands at all. He is just strict. I'm coming in speed to power, everything that I've got, I'm going to push you over. And Skoronski didn't have the length to hold up against that. So that concerned me a little bit, because he was trying to deal with speed and that outside read like that. Now, again, You're going to try him at tackle first because that's what he played. You're going to try him
Yeah.
at tackle. Titans need a tackle. Taylor Lewan's obviously gone now. That's going to be a fun lawsuit to get into once that all comes out. But,
I know.
So you've got you're going to play him at tackle, but I think he's initially going to move to guard. And honestly, I like him at guard. If he has a little bit of interior help, I think that this is a guy who could be a Pro Bowl left guard several times over. He's got a ton of potential at that position. I just don't think he's going to hold up a tackle.
So we all agree he's going to be a Pro Bowler.
We just don't know where.
We don't know where. But again, he's going to get an opportunity to go out and prove us wrong, and which is fine. I welcome that. And listen, Carmen, I will tell you this right now: if I'm wrong, I will be happy to admit it, and you can victory lap me for the rest of time, and you will, and it's fair, and it should be. But one of the players I was going to get to, I wanted to ask you about. We settled on Darnell Wright as who was presumed to be our right tackle.
Yes.
Brian Baldinger, unprompted before the draft. This is before the draft. We were talking about guys. I think I was actually putting together my own mock draft for NFL.com. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, like, after Paris Johnson Jr., like, who is the next guy? And Baldy was like, dude, he's like, and he said Darnell Wright was his player. He's like, I actually like him better. And I think that he's probably going to be the best pro. What was your read on Darnell Wright coming into the draft? And what did you think about that pick for the Bears?
Yeah. So the first thing I do want to talk about a little bit is tackle in general. And I think it's because when you kind of look at the recent trends in the last 5 years of tackles, everybody kind of has a specific type that they like. So everyone's kind of influenced by that. Because like my number one tackle was Broderick Jones. I loved Broderick Jones out of Georgia. But that's because I like that power. I like that size, right? Like that's just my idea of a prototypical tackle is Broderick Jones. But everybody kind of has a different look at it. And you can see tackles kind of fitting based on their size, their style, however they play that position. So like him going to Pittsburgh was great. But to get back on Darnell Wright, I'm a little biased because I bleed orange. I'm a lifelong Tennessee fan. So, I thought that he was good. I didn't think he was that good because we suffered through a couple of years with him. And I say we as Tennessee fans. He struggled his first year. He played left tackle, I think. No, it was right tackle. He struggled. Then they moved him to left and he struggled. And then they moved him back to right and he was fine. And this year, I mean, he looked awesome. Cleaned up a lot of his technique, the different things that he was doing. He's got a lot of power. He got a little bit lighter as well. And I think that was just so that he could, have the speed to hold up on the outside. And that game against Alabama, he was awesome. I mean, that was the game that if anybody looks at it and goes, okay, this is who Darnell Wright is and who he can be, that's the game that you're going to see it because he shut down Will Anderson Jr. And Will Anderson Jr. was a non-factor in that game. And that's the only game I can think of Will Anderson Jr. disappearing like that. So that's all positive, right? Now, the other thing too is I think that the adjustment that he had, he was growing into right tackle. They move him to left. And then they bring in this new offense, which is super high paced. You're running, you're pulling snaps like 20 seconds apart of each other, and you're getting 8-9 plays into a drive. And the offensive line coach is sitting there going, kill the drive, field goal, punt. I don't care. Kill it. Like, because his offensive line can't keep up with it. But they had another year in that system. And so I think that his stamina is going to be an advantage for him as well because he held up. They were able to keep those drives going, whereas the first year they were cutting them off. I like the pick. I think that I know that, it obviously would have been really, if Paris Johnson Jr. had been able to fall, that would have been a great pairing to think about, right? Because Ohio State, Justin Fields, Paris Johnson Jr., blah, blah, blah. Okay, it would have been cool. But what you really need to do is you need to shore up that right side because if Justin gets flushed out of the pocket, where's Justin going? Right side. Okay, so if he's going the right side and you got a guy that's already worked with a mobile quarterback in Hendon Hooker who like to get flushed out to the right, he knows how to play that. He knows how to do that, and he's going to help open up stuff for Justin. So I like that. He's a smash mouth runner, like run blocker. I like that too. He's got the strength to hold up. So I think that the Bears got it. I didn't have a problem with it once you took in all those factors. I just, I remember those first couple years, and I just hope that 22 is not an outlier season.
I think too, there's a lot of intangibles that go along with Darnell Wright, given all of the uncertainty and instability at Tennessee when he was there. I mean, he talked about with us, not even having a coach in the building in the offseason to be able to work with. And so like he has this self-starter mentality. He's the one that's getting himself up to go to the weight room. He has all of that kind of motivation built in, and that is something that you need out of those positions, out of the offensive line in general, is to have kind of that work ethic, that drive, and just the self-starter type of mentality. And I think he has that. And to be able to adjust and be adaptable to systems. I mean, the game is so different in college, right? Between college and the NFL. I mean, he also talked about not really ever being in a huddle. It was only dead ball situations and special occasions.
Yep.
So you have to be adaptable because you have to learn an entirely different way to play the game at the NFL level. And I just think that he proved that over and over again, even in college, where he was just thrust into situations that he was not prepared for, quite honestly. So I think the fact that you saw the maturation as he continued his collegiate career, despite all of that, is another thing that drew the Bears to him. And I mean, this was their guy from the jump also. They had the private workout with him. Ryan Poles put him through the ringer. And Darnell also talked to us about, that's when I knew, though, that I was never going to give up. I was never going to quit on anything. If I can get through this workout with an NFL offensive line coach, a GM breathing down my back, on not neutral territory or on kind of unfamiliar territory, then all right, I can do this. And that was a huge vote of confidence in himself too. And he was so much fun also to talk to, and he was such a great guy. And he also, I think you'll appreciate this, he is so close to Trey Smith, the now Super Bowl champion Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs, who also went to Tennessee. And they are in constant contact. He said he called Trey like a mentor essentially to him. He's going to be training with him this off season. And I'm just like, what better guy to learn from? I love Trey. Trey's awesome.
No, Trey was a first round talent, honestly, that had that injury that year, and the Chiefs got an absolute steal with him. Couldn't believe they got that deep in that draft. That was awesome.
No, it's a really good pick for them. And so I hope that it works out. And again, like, as you said, you hope that last season, not an outlier, but I think that players improve, and I think that, we've talked about this. Carmen and I talk about this a lot. Like, we trust Ryan Poles when he's evaluating offensive line. He has a very specific type, which is why Braxton Jones was able to work last season. And so we're hopeful for Darnell Wright. One other guy I wanted to ask you about, though, is Tyler Scott. The 4th round pick out of Cincinnati, starting to get a lot of buzz. And even Peyton Manning, your guy, I'm assuming, was talking about him recently. I think that as much as we love Roschon Johnson, and I'm with you because as a fantasy dork, and I'm panicking now because my fantasy, a dynasty league that I'm in is drafting right now. And I had the number 1 pick, so I got Bijan Robinson, but I'm hoping I get Roschon Johnson. But what about Tyler Scott? What kind of impact can he make for the Bears this season? Because I think he pushes some of those guys.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about Scott is obviously we have the size issue, right? And size is kind of something at that wide receiver position that's getting to be a big problem. He's right there at 5'8", 175. So you're pretty much looking at him as somebody who's probably going to be limited exclusively as a small slot, which I think there's a lot of teams that are going to maintain that role in their offense because it's a good little matchup change, right? Especially when you've got a big slot guy.
You got Chase Claypool in there for a while, and then you
switch it up. And then you switch it up. You come back with the speed, the quickness, which that's where Scott's going to be really great, is short area quickness. I think he's got really good long speed. That's, it's a little bit tougher to use that at that size, but the short area quickness is where he's going to be great. The little whip routes underneath, in and outs, out and ins, however you run it, the way that you design this offense. And Justin's going to be able to use them as well. The question, I think, with the production is limited, I think, because there's not a lot of roles where you can use a small slot exclusively, right? And get that production. So I'm thinking maybe 20 catches this year would be my guess on him. That's assuming that he plays most of the year. And And then that size too, you have the durability issues. So the one thing that he does have to his advantage, he played on the boundary as well at Cincinnati, and it actually looked pretty good, especially against Arkansas. He had a few plays where it was like, oh, dang, this guy can play, right? And that's against the SEC. It was a good defense too. They were still healthy at that point. It was the first game of the year. But I think that it's hard to project a guy like that forward with the way that the league has shifted, with the way that it is evolving. And the small slot is essentially dying in front of our very eyes because defenses have adjusted to it. You can thank Bill Belichick for that. He did a great job beating his own trick,
Yeah.
But that's I hope that he can find a role outside of the small slot. And that's how he'll be able to stick. I just don't know if that happens.
I think that's key too. I mean, they were trying him on Friday when I was at Bears minicamp in the slot, and that was something Tyler talked to us about. And he was like, "Yeah, I haven't really done that." And again, at that size, it's hard to hold up, especially when, look at Detroit. Even Detroit drafted Brian Branch, so you get a safety that's going to play nickel corner, and he's going to be lining up against guys like that. That's a big guy that is going to just be able to kind of out physical any sort of small slot receiver, which is why I think Chase Claypool will come in so much handy. But I kind of am reminded of when I was with the Bucs, like a Scotty Miller type, who was more of a boundary guy, more of a deep threat guy because he was fast. Didn't get a ton of work, ton of production, but he was good for a couple of really big kind of off the wall catches.
Playoffs, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, in Green Bay at Lambeau
remember
in the
that.
NFC Championship. Not that I remember that perfectly right before the half. But, you can use them in those gadget plays and those deep threat plays to kind of blow the top off of a defense. And I think that Tyler is maybe better suited for something like that, just given the fact that he is. It was kind of jarring how small he was when we were talking to him. I was like, I'm taller than you in my heels.
And it's not just him though. It's like you got Darnell Mooney on that roster too, and Mooney's a little bit bigger, and he can basically do the same exact thing. So that's my question coming into it is, can he push Mooney to get some playing time? Do they think that they'll have something with Scott on the field that they can't get with Mooney? I hope so, because like Adam kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, I want these guys to prove me wrong. If I've got criticisms of them, it's just my job to have the criticisms and to point these things out because I'm an analyst. But I want them to prove me wrong. I love these guys proving, me, Todd McShay, all these other guys out there. I love seeing them get proven wrong because it's part of what makes this whole thing beautiful. We're all trying to become better as individuals, as players, as analysts. That's what it's all about.
It is fun when you look back.
He returned picks too, by the way. I just want to point that out. He was used as a returner also in Ricky Manning.
Yeah, and I think they've got him projected as a kick returner.
Yeah,
pushing for Velus Jones.
Yeah, and that's cool. A lot of people are talking about this because obviously I've struck up a kinship with Velus Jones, and people are like, well, you got to pick one of the. I'm like, no, I want everybody to do well. I want everybody to push everybody and have competition and for it to be like, I would rather have too many guys than not enough, because the Bears have had not enough guys for a long time. But I do actually, John, do you mind taking a couple of questions? We've had some people who want to ask a couple of questions, if that's
cool.
Of
course. Yeah, I've got all the time in the world, man.
If you don't mind. And Carmen, are you cool to stick around too? Are we keeping you?
Yeah, I've got about 5-10 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah, we won't be long, but I want to get a couple of questions in for the crowd because everybody's been awesome tonight. By the way, if you're watching the show and you've been enjoying it, comment using the word sick, and we would appreciate it. But here's a question. Should the Bears have drafted a center? If you're Ryan Poles, would you have gone after JMS or Mazzie Smith? Smith being a defensive tackle, but were there some, obviously they didn't draft an edge, they didn't draft a center. And I think those are two things that stand out to people. Was that a mistake?
Not necessarily. We talked about Cody Whitehair being there. You said that the battle would come down between him and Lucas, right? But Doug Kramer's on that roster too. Yeah. Doug can play. Doug was a lot of fun at Illinois, right? But so I don't think it was necessarily a mistake, unless you're just trying to build a lot of depth, especially that early in the draft. I know that Schmitz, I think he was available in the second round
Yes.
when the Bears picked.
Early,
I think he was
early.
A lot of people assume that's where they were going.
Yeah, and I loved him. I thought he was the best center in the class, but I know there were other. I think there was somebody else's picked in front of him, but I thought he was the best one. Now, I don't think necessarily. And then, Mozzie Smith too, like great player, obviously.
Yeah.
Would he work out in Chicago? I don't know. I don't know if he'd be able to make it on the field very often in Chicago. No offense to anybody.
No, I mean, but I thought he would have worked better in Dallas, for instance.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's the whole reason Dallas took him was to stop, the Jalen Hurts quarterback sneak, basically, is the thought process behind it. So now he's going to work out better there, where he can kind of play that 0-1. And I think that he'll be fine there. I don't think it was a mistake at all. I like what they did.
I don't. Where would you have taken Mozzie Smith? Mozzie Smith went at the back of the first round, so you didn't have a pick at that point. Like I'm not taking Mozzie Smith over Darnell Wright. Yeah, you're going to trade back in and give up some of the guys that you got in the second round. Where day 2 you got 2 defensive tackles. So it doesn't. The math doesn't math right
and
there.
Pickens and Dexter are both going to be very solid rotational guys, anyways. And Smith was a guy I think at Michigan that played 450 snaps last year. If that sounds right to me, I think that's right. So, again, we're just talking about a rotational guy. We're not talking about a guy that you're going to play 600-700 snaps in a single season. You're talking about a guy that's going to rotate. And if Darnell Wright's going to be on the field 100% of the time. Irvin Dexter is going to play 450 snaps this year. Pickens is probably going to play 350. I mean, don't give up that depth. Don't give up the back end of the draft to get back in the first round for a defensive tackle or a center, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you also too, you have to understand, with the veteran, with a young offensive line, the fact that you're going to go with the veteran center, 3 guys that we just talked about right now who can play center on this team. Additionally, on the defensive side of the football, you got a guy like Dominique Robinson, who last year was drafted, showed some flashes, but you hope that he's going to continue to progress and learn the position. And so you guys can get better from
Marcus Walker too.
Yeah.
There's a ton of depth here. We didn't even talk about, the 7th round pick last year out of Southern, Ja'Tyre Carter. Like that guy can play too. And you picked up Josh Lugg as a free agent. Lorenz Metz can play too. Is Cincinnati, another Cincinnati guy.
Yeah.
Lugg I liked a lot. He was at Notre Dame. I didn't think he would get drafted, but I thought that's a good depth piece. Developmental. Yeah, no, you did fine. I don't think that there was a need to draft a center. I don't think there was a need to draft a defensive tackle. I don't. Outside of the guys that you took, in day 2, I think that's fine right there.
I think with center too. Go ahead.
No, please.
I think with center too. I've talked about this. We've talked about this. When you have a young quarterback who's still developing, it's beneficial to have a center that's a veteran that knows what he's looking at, the checks that he needs to make to take as much work off of that quarterback's plate, so that Justin can just focus on being Justin, and that center knows exactly what he's looking for and can call the rest of the line at this point. And I just think that helps out a young guy so much more. And then the Jets, they took, I think, Tippmann and for as a center. And I'm like, that's perfect because Aaron Rodgers already knows what he's looking at. There's nothing Aaron Rodgers hasn't seen in this league. So he doesn't need his center to be calling stuff out for him or to be IDing, whoever's coming in the rush and all that other stuff. So I just think for the Bears, I always talked about wanting a veteran center in front of Justin Fields because I wanted them to be able to take off as much from Justin Fields' plate as possible.
And that's why
not just that too. It's also having consistency there. We talk about having a consistency at a coach, but consistency at center is important too.
Yeah.
It's very true. And it's why they went after Lucas Patrick, who is very familiar with Luke Getsy's offense. On the other side, with the Aaron Rodgers explanation, like Nathaniel Hackett, Rodgers knows everything. He doesn't need a rookie center pointing out who to pick up and what to do and all that good stuff. All right, let's do one more question. Again, we appreciate everybody who's been joining us in the Bears 85. Hard to grade right after the draft, but what would you say about Ryan Poles and his process?
I think I like it first off because like we started off with, to have impact players coming in immediately in day 3, that we're talking about that are going to impact this roster immediately. That's tremendous. You don't always come out and get that, out of the draft. A lot of times your day 3, you're thinking future, you're thinking 2-3 years down the road. Maybe they'll be developed enough to get them on a second contract. That's kind of the thought process. And so when we talk about potentially a starting running back, potentially depth, a strong safety that might be on the field and play a good bit, through a rotation or something, or in a specific role, talking about special teams people, a project linebacker, maybe he's an edge rusher. We don't know yet. We're going to see what they're going to do with him. No, that's great. So having the balance, where you want to take a little bit of risk in taking that project in the 5th round, but also getting those impact guys that are going to play on your roster right away. Like I think that's the walking the fine line between the process, where you don't want to be too safe, thinking 2-3 years in the future, and not too much of a, too much aggressiveness, because then, that's how GMs get fired, is getting too aggressive. So no, I thought it's a really good draft. Would I say top 10? It's hard to say at this point. It might be, because I mean, you kind of look at holes and plug in rosters and, what you're trying to do and what you're fixing to accomplish with it. I think there's a really good shot that there's a lot of impact players on this roster. And we didn't even talk about Tyreek Stevenson, man. We didn't even talk about Stevenson. That's another corner that might play right away, so.
It's funny because, I mean, when you look at, I just want him to be better than Joey Porter Jr., the pick that we gave up for Chase Claypool. And I think if Stevenson outplays him, you're like, well, we're better off anyways. And we got Claypool. But I think when you look back at his tape at Georgia, and this was something that Draft Dr. Phil pointed out last week, like this guy, and this is a trait that Ryan Poles had throughout the draft, was like tremendous athlete, but this guy can do a multitude of things in the defensive secondary.
I had him coming into the year, I think, is my number 4 corner in the class. When I did draft rank, grade ranks of each position group, I believe he came out at 4. The tape was great. Like, you want to talk about a guy that he can be physical, he'll be physical. He'll press people. You want to talk about a guy that can play zone, he can play zone. You want to talk about a guy that's capable of man coverage, he's capable of man coverage. And it's like we overlook corners that can do all 3, main types of coverage for, defenses preferring somebody, right? Like, I think Porter Jr. is one of the guys that can kind of do it all. But Banks is pretty much, he's pretty much a man corner, I think. He's going to be in man coverage. You're not going to really want him in zone. Whereas, Ringo is more of a zone guy. You want him in zone. You don't want him in man. So we kind of overlook these guys that are good at all the coverages and can do it all. And instead, like I say, it's really the NFL teams. They go after these guys that are great at one or the other, to fit the defense. And, you get guys like Stevenson that are kind of like left out on the, on the overall boards because, they don't have elite ability. Well, no, but I can do anything I want with my defense now with them, and I think that's,
And he has the length and the size to make up for any sort of
long arms, if I remember, because I think he's 5'11".
Very long arms.
Yeah, but he's got arms that are like normally you would have if you're 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah. So he can, if he misses an assignment, which he does, they talked about how smart they find him to be and how cerebral, and his football IQ is off the charts, but he does get beat. He's also got the physical tools to make up for that and make sure that the guy doesn't get past him that way. So I just thought that was very interesting. And Tyreek Stevenson actually and Tyler Scott trained together this offseason.
Ooh,
that was a fun little fact that came out of minicamp. Was that
do we know
called
where they
that was the first call for each of them in Tampa, or I don't know if it was Tampa, but it was with a guy named, I wrote it down, Murphy is his last name. So it might be Tampa, because I think that there's a guy in Tampa that trains.
I've been learning so much about these trainers now that I've been going out
to
all these different games and finding out.
Tyler Murphy is their trainers' names.
Tyler Murphy? Okay. Yeah. No, he's good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it piqued my interest. I was like, ooh, who did they train with? I don't know that.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's usually
they train.
Southern California at UCLA, USC, or Florida somewhere. It's usually
Florida.
where it happens.
Texas.
There's a lot of guys in
picked up a lot.
Texas has good up there. Yeah.
Yep.
But listen, John, we want to thank you for being here. You can find him on Twitter at Draft Vogel. What's next for you now that the draft's over? What is your main area of focus?
So it looks like this offseason got a lot of fantasy stuff. Just started up with daily stat jocks. I just dropped a rookie report actually today. All of the rookies were drafted with some fantasy insight, as well as some of the undrafted free agents as well of note. That just came out today. Then it's just I've always already back to the tape. I was looking at Duke and Boston College today. Duke's got a great offensive tackle coming out this year that we're going to be talking about this time next year. Maybe I don't think we'll be talking about it with the Bears, but
I hope not.
So it's a lot of it's just a lot of tape at this point. It's tape, it's profiling, going through, getting all the players right, and then just throwing all the updates I can on at Draft Vogel on Twitter. That's where pretty much all of my stuff goes anyways. So
all right. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. Again, we've enjoyed watching you not only here, but all over the Sick Network. So appreciate you taking some time to talk with some Chicago Bears. Hopefully we can do that again in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me. I do appreciate it greatly.
No, we love the conversation. There he goes. John Vogel at Draft Vogel. Some good insight and it's good to get somebody who's not me, who just doesn't love them. I love everybody. But anyways, what's next for you, Carmen? What do we got coming out from you over the next couple of days or weeks or whatever?
It's not whatever. I'm going into USFL coverage. I
love talk about it. Yeah, how was it? What was that experience? It seemed really cool. How many Diet Cokes did you end up with that day? 4, 5? What was the number?
No, I actually only had 3 over the course of the 2 games. So I had 1 in each game, and I had 1 between the games. But Detroit, I really do love Ford Field. It's a great place. And I got to see, the Michigan Panthers were the primetime game. They didn't win, but they drew a pretty good crowd. So it was exciting to see a different kind of football, and I got to catch up with some guys that I didn't expect to see, guys that had been on the Bucks and coaches even. So it was cool. It was a cool experience. So this weekend I'm going back up there, but I'm going back up a day early because Detroit has their mini camp starting this weekend, the rookie mini camp. So I will be at Detroit's practice on Friday, the Lions practice on Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday I have a USFL game each day.
See, that's why you didn't want to say anything, because you were going to Detroit and you knew it would anchor me, but it doesn't.
I know, exactly.
I'm cool. No. I'm cool with it. But no, I appreciate the USFL coverage. The XFL has been very fun. And especially if you root for the White Sox, you need to find something else to do with your time, because you do not want to watch that team. That game, what you should have done is when they scored 11 runs on Sunday, you should have been like, that's it for me. That is. I
wish that they would have stretched those runs. You didn't need all of those in that game. You could have just saved some for the next game. I was like,
roll them over.
The Sox have bats. Because now I know that that's possible too. That's the frustrating part. Is I know that the team can do that, and now I'm like, but you're not going to keep doing it. This isn't going to be anything consistent.
Blow the organization up and start over. Send all their players to Anaheim. All the good ones. All 2 of them. No, I'm kidding. But listen, thanks for being here, Carmen. We appreciate everything that you do. And we'll check you out on foxsports.com and all the great work that you're doing, not only with the NFL, but the USFL as well. I'll just say it here too, by the way. Thanks to everybody for joining us here. Am I supposed to do a Manscaped read, by the way? Because I've got a box here. Manscaped send us another box. I don't know what's in it. But we'll be talking about it. Okay, good. I'm giving them a little bit of free publicity. They sent me something. My son said, I want to, my 4-year-old's I want to see this. I'm like, actually, you don't want to probably see this. But we'll check it out later. But in any event, thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Kendall Williamson, it was great to talk to him. Hopefully he'll come back onto the show. John Vogel, and of course, Carmen Vitali. And for Sammy and everybody, thanks so much for being here. See you soon. And until that time, bear down.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.